Titans first aired on July 19th of 2003 on both Cartoon Network and Kids WB. And that takes me back. I was like, okay, Robin, who are these nobodies? 16 years later, I can identify them just by their silhouettes. Let's talk about the OG Teen Titans show. Like I was saying, it ran from 2003 to 2006 for about 5 seasons and even had a made-for-TV movie. That I'm going to be glossing over here for the sake of brevity. Originally, it was only planned to have 4 seasons. Wow, they were confident in that show, much more than some other networks. But it was so successful that they renewed it for a 5th. To say that people enjoyed the show was an understatement. So let's go into their designs and characterization. The Boy Wonder, one of the dynamic duo, the sole survivor of the Flying Graysons. Yes, he is officially Dick Grayson, Robin. This iteration of the Boy Wonder bears the classic color scheme and its saturated glory. Titans of 2019. The 2 dominant colors are complementary red and green, solid choices which really pop. The accents are black and yellow, which also stand out very well, while still being pleasing to the eyes. A+ for color, it's complex, saturated, but not garish. Now, Robin's bright scheme makes sense, especially for Grayson. He was an acrobat and his attire reflects that. It grabs attention, rather than blend into the shadows like Batman does. Even his body type is in contrast to the Caped Crusader. He's lean and nimble, with just some muscle to him. This body type, combined with his cape and jagged hair, make for a very distinct silhouette, which, as you'll see, is a common trend among the Titans. An excellent and unmistakable design. I'll give his conveyance an S. This Robin is a bit more complicated than the earlier incarnations of the Boy Wonder. He's a bit more aggressive and confrontational. He draws more on the paranoid Batman that has taken over the public opinion of the character. Over the first season, he has a large obsession with figuring out who Slade is, going so far as to disguise himself as a mercenary in order to get closer to the guy. A lot of his development over the show centers around becoming a more level-headed leader and letting his paranoia go. Plus, there's his blooming romance with Starfire, which spanned the entire series. He slowly, but surely, becomes the leader that the team needs and deserves. His character is all the better for it. S. Robin has 2 major variant designs, the first of which is the Red X costume. In that case, he used it to spy on Slade over a single episode, which was really the height of his obsession with the man. One could say that Red X was probably a reflection of Robin's worst aspects. Conversely, Nightwing is a reflection of Robin's best aspects. In the episode How Long Is Forever, Starfire accidentally is sent into the future and seeks out the team in order to get back. Out of all of the members of the Titans, Robin is in the best condition. These are very strong variants, one of which gets a mention in the bonus round, so I believe Robin gets an S here as well. Grand total for Robin is a double S. Starfire is the next major member of the Titans. Hailing from the distant planet Tamran, she is brought to Earth by a bunch of alien slavers, but she escapes them, thus unwittingly starting the event that brings the Titans together. Color-wise, she is very solid. Her clothing is a nice analogous palette of light blue, purple, and dark green, which contrasts nicely with her orange skin and brownish red hair. It's a very good multicolor palette that fits her status as an alien princess. S. Conveyance is very good as well. The costume is just skimpy enough to hint at her needing to take in sunlight to charge her powers, but not too skimpy to have moral guardians raging on AOL forums or whatever was popular during the early 2000s. It also has some alien accents to it, but I would have liked it to be a bit more armor-like. She gets an A for that area. Wish I could say the same for the new Titans outfit. Seriously, what were they thinking? Character-wise, Starfire is without a doubt the heart of the team. There is not a single member of the core team that hates her. Raven, meditation buddies. Cyborg, kindred spirits on being outsiders. Beast Boy, she generally tolerates his shenanigans. As for Robin, headcanon OTP, change my mind. Again, going back to How Long is Forever, when Starfire goes missing, the team utterly falls apart. They need her as much as she needs them. Jumping off that point, she needs them because she's not accustomed to Earth, which is evident in her speech patterns and her fascination with Earth customs, often finding the mundane to be novel. Yet this isn't just the extent of this aspect, as her Tamaranian heritage is subject of several episodes, such as her rivalry with her sister in Sisters, her arranged marriage in Betrothed, and of course, when she went through Tamaranian puberty in Transformation. When I went back to look at this series, I thought Robin was going to be the one with the most characterization. But really, when you think about it, Starfire is the most important Titan. There are a few times when I use this rank, but I pose that her characterization is a triple S. Heck, we're not even done with Starfire just yet. She still has 3 major variants. The first is her prison outfit, which is essentially a darker version of her regular suit, yet her skin is being covered by metallic strips, so she can't gain any energy from the sun. That alone is a strong variant. The other is her puberty variant, which, while funny, is a good metaphor for regular puberty, and is also an extension of her own bizarre alien biology. Finally, since I had to, her ball gown! I just think it looks good on her. Give that a double S. The only person who could possibly beat her in this category is Beast Boy, because he's a freaking shapeshifter. Now let's see, what is her final score? Oh dear, we don't have a value for 16 here. Geez, what can go above a triple S, huh?
Keyblade!
Yeah, that'll do. She gets the first X rank. The mechanic and switch hitter of the group, Cyborg's palette on paper is simple, but its arrangement is quite striking. He's primarily monochromatic with a combination of white, gray, and some black. He also has some sections that are 2 different values of blue, which seem to be glass portions that contain circuitry. The simple color scheme keeps his complex design unified and clean. A+. His conveyance is spot on as well. He's mainly machine with some remainders of human flesh left, though we'll get to the underlying significance of that later. Aside from that, he has a very distinct silhouette that makes him stand out from the group. Like his color, conveyance is also an A+. By nature, Cyborg's inner conflict is him coming to grips with being mostly robotic. He often tries to push himself in one way or the other, either wanting to be a normal person or modifying himself to be more mechanical and suffering because of it. There was also that time he was infected by a virus and wanted to eat anything that ran on electricity, but that really doesn't come into the character arc too much. Early on, he was probably the most confrontational with Robin, but eventually he warmed up to him as the episodes went on. Though one member of the team he's really getting along with is, of course, Beast Boy. You'd often find them eating or playing video games together. Much like the other Titans, he gets an S in characterization. Unfortunately, he has minimal variants, only 2 really stand out, those being the disguise for when he infiltrates Hive and the one where he tries to pass as human. Both really shed light on his desire to be seen as a fellow human. I'll give the bonus an A, bringing Cyborg to an S in total. Ah, Beast Boy, the plucky comic relief. His color palette isn't exactly as sophisticated as the others. It barely is complimentary with the choice of purple and green. While I've seen that happen before, they tend to be garish and really tend to work on a certain clown. Fortunately, it has neutral colors that bring it back together. I think his color scheme is the weakest of the team, B+. Now there are 2 major elements that hint at his powers, the first being his minor animalistic features like fangs and ears. The other is a bit more subtle. His overall silhouette in promotional materials tends to depict him as being on all fours. Fitting, considering his power. Aside from that, his body type is the most scrawny of the group, which makes sense for a comic relief character. Also a B+. Thankfully, his characterization makes up for where he lacks in visuals. Not just a tofu-loving comic relief character, he's also the resident Casanova wannabe. While he's been known to swoon over girls from time to time, there are really two major loves in his life. The first is, of course, Raven. In the early seasons, she's not really amused by his advances, but she does warm up to him. And then there is Tara, who I will definitely be saving for part 2. Some may find him to be irritating, but I can't. He's too good-natured to be that irritating. He'll give him an A there. As for his variant bonus, he's a shapeshifter that turns into a whole bunch of animals. Of course he gets a triple S there. In total, Beast Boy gets an S. Last, but not the least of the Titans is Raven. Her palette is the most muted, and at a distance looks very simple, though there are a few more colors aside from the dark violet cape. The dark purple bodysuit and her lavender hair makes for an analogous palette that's balanced out by her gray skin and metallic accessories. While not as sophisticated as Cyborg, it's still better than Beast Boy, so Raven gets an A- for color. Because purple is powerful. No, really, purple is synonymous with nobility, which also brings us to her conveyance. Now, there are a few ways to symbolize magical power. Some use comically wide-brimmed hats, others use equally comical collars. In the case of Raven, she takes the more subdued method and wears a hood. The hood itself serves two purposes. As I said before, it symbolizes her magical power, but it also shows that she's reclusive. More often than not, she has her cloak obscuring most of her body. She doesn't really want others to look at her. This makes sense given her backstory. That, however, is another section, so for now I'll just give her conveyance an A. Now strap in, everybody, because it's lore time! Abridged. Raven was birthed by Arella, who happened to be the bride of the demon Trigon. Arella was taken in by monks who lived in the Temple Azarath, which was in another dimension. Raven would be born there and was taught everything she knew by the monk's leader, Azar. After her teacher ascended to another plane of existence, Raven attempted to confront Trigon, but failed. Fortunately, Trigon spared her, as he believed he could convince her to ally with him when he finally returned to Earth. Around Raven's 16th or so birthday, she felt his power return, and so she fled to Earth. Her struggle with this demonic nature of her powers is her major character arc. That and her opening up to the team members, though the two are somewhat intertwined. Her powers key off her emotions, and her connection to the team is ultimately what gives her the strength to defeat Trigon. Double S for the doorstopper of a backstory. Raven mainly has palette swaps for her variants. Thankfully, they are significant ones, the majority of which are in her mindscape and simply represent different aspects of her personality. Her white outfit, on the other hand, is much different. There are only a handful of times we get to see this outfit. First is when she is under the tutelage of Rourke in the episode Spellbound. The second time was How Long Is Forever. We've covered that episode, so no surprises there. Of course, then there is the time she confronted Trigon. So this costume probably means mastery over her powers. At least that seems to be the common thread between all these instances. While a tad redundant, they are significant enough to warrant an S for her bonus, bringing her total to, you guessed it, an S. Now before we conclude this part, I bet you're wondering, gee, shoot 400, all these characters are S ranked. You sure you're not a tad biased due to growing up with this show? Well, it's true, I did grow up with this show. Allow me to further explain why I ranked them the way I did, especially for their characterization. The show itself is of course visually solid. It's hard to argue otherwise unless you really don't like anime. As for the characterization of them as a whole, This really is how an ensemble cast for a TV show should be handled. They each have their own character arcs through individual storylines or through meaningful interaction with their teammates. That is what makes this show great, and it's the very lack of characterization that plagues Teen Titans Go and what brings that show down. The visual design of characters is what initially draws an audience in, but the writing behind them is what makes an audience stay. Stay tuned for part 2. For the record, Raven is my favorite Titan.